Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack, and today we'll be presenting a managerial analysis of Uber. We will begin with an overview of the company, then go on to an analysis of the problems that Uber faces, and conclude with our recommendations for Uber. Uber is an American technology company that was founded in 2009 out of San Francisco. And since 2009, Uber has provided great innovation to the world of technology through the services it provides, whether that is ride sharing or food delivery. In 2013, 4 years after their founding, they were recognized by USA Today as the Tech Company of the Year. And 6 years later, in 2019, when they decided to go public, they had one of the top 10 highest IPOs in recorded history. They currently hold a 71% market share in ride sharing and a 22% market share in food delivery and operate to about 93 million monthly users in around 900 metropolitan areas. As a result of their success, they're one of the largest firms in the US gig economy, but their involvement in this has sparked controversy as their drivers do request and fight for the benefits of employment, such as healthcare and help on taxes. And as a result of this, we have seen their managerial problems and practices stretch out and create controversy on other fronts, whether it is their relationship with their drivers, as stated, their relationship with their employees, or their relationship with their users.
So, Uber's competitive strategy has positioned them as an industry leader in the ride sharing industry. And one of the main advantages is its convenience and very cheap fare, which have been sources of scarcity and differentiability. When Uber was first founded in 2009, having a driver come to your specific requested location was completely brand new. And the cheap fare for it was a huge improvement from taxis. In addition, Uber coveted the systematic electronic payment system, which was only implemented by other companies like Lyft after Uber implemented it and demonstrated its validity. In addition, its international service is very helpful because many international travelers going to Europe or Asia where Uber is used are more comfortable using Uber rather than a smaller local ride sharing service. Their other advantage comes from market penetration, which has helped them maintain low costs and fees paid to suppliers, and it has helped them retain loyalty from drivers who want to stay at Uber because Uber only takes a very, very small cut of the driver's earnings. However, there's also a drawback due to the process being very easy to replicate and the growth of competitors, which makes the threat of substitutes very high. In addition, Uber's brand image has been tarnished over time due to scandals and other incidents, which has also diminished customer loyalty over time.
Uber has a strong culture that's exclusionary towards women. One example that illustrates this is the story of Susan Fowler. She's a former employee of Uber who joined in 2017 and experienced sexual harassment on the job. She reported her experiences to HR, but they refused to take disciplinary action because her perpetrator had, quote, stellar performance reviews. She later found out that several women at the company had shared experiences with her. This outlines a stark contrast between Uber's espoused values and their actual underlying assumptions. Some of their espoused values are women are welcome in the workplace, a value of ideas over hierarchy, and a customer-first based approach that relies on trust. However, many of their artifacts expose a difference between this and their assumptions. Some of the artifacts are sexual harassment in the workplace, a low percentage of female employees, which includes their corporate level engineers and then also their driver base, and then sexist jokes and comments made by executives, which are publicly available and publicly displayed. So, therefore, some of their underlying assumptions are that job performance is more important than psychological safety when it comes to employees, and essentially that boys will be boys and that anything's acceptable as long as you perform well on the job. Uber has started to address some of these issues at the corporate level by retraining HR and instating a female head of diversity, but they have yet to really address these cultural concerns at the level of app users and drivers. In 2020, they conducted a survey of 500 women, and 23% had said that they reported a driver for inappropriate behavior, whereas only 15% had said the same for an experience with Lyft. Also, 45% of female riders indicated that they prefer female drivers, whereas only 9% said that they prefer male drivers. To this day, Uber refuses to allow users to request female drivers on the app, despite the popular demand and safety concerns among women. This is an example of how Uber continues to enact reactionary rather than preventative measures for protecting women. Ultimately, employees are becoming confused about Uber's performative actions and whether the culture is really beginning to shift. Uber operates with a highly centralized and horizontally differentiated structure, as you can see in the chart. They have a strong chain of command, and decisions are made quickly and without much input from individuals at lower levels of the company. This causes a lack of a big picture understanding of the issues faced by the organization at a cultural level rather than a strategic level. Also, competition is high. Employees often work against their supervisors in order to rise up in the company and take over their positions. This ultimately results in time spent restructuring the company instead of actual work being done, so Uber falls behind in terms of product development and competitive advantage. This poses a dilemma and also an integral question for its employees. Should they prioritize their career trajectories over the trajectory of the company, or in other words, the I versus the we? As perpetuated by the culture, agency and achievement are prioritized over community and belonging, which causes an aversion to helping others and fosters an I-driven community.
So Uber has a very vast entrepreneurial network due to having a vast both corporate and a driver division. However, there's a huge sense of distance and disparity within the two divisions, so that leads to a lack of closeness, a lack of cohesion, and fervent distrust by the drivers towards their corporate superiors. This distrust is further exacerbated by the superiors' very self-interested activities as they focus more on retaining their profits and covering their own high positions and images rather than ensuring the well-being for the drivers and for the customers. This leads to a lack of accountability in both the corporate and the driver divisions. Furthermore, there is a power influence rather than a status influence, and this creates a problem because many of the drivers feel uncomfortable to speak up. This is very easily demonstrated by the Travis Kalanick incident. Former CEO Travis Kalanick rode an Uber, and his driver complained to him about the diminishing fares and how this affected the situation. However, Kalanick responded with yelling instead of an open-minded reception.
The conflict issues faced by Uber stem down to their negotiations with drivers over compensation and incentives. The key motivational issue here is the link between performance and outcome. In 2017, the average hourly earnings for a driver was only $9.21, which is less than the minimum wage in several U.S. markets. Ultimately, the company is facing a shortage of drivers and a high turnover rate. Uber attempts to offer incentives and bonus pay for drivers when they complete a certain number of trips in a designated amount of time, but the additional expenses accrued by completing these goals diminishes the returns of the reward. The overall consensus among drivers is that working for Uber alone is not sufficient to pay the bills, and the hourly pay is not worth the long hours spent driving. Also, the safety risks perpetuated by the culture and the lack of full-time benefits, because Uber refuses to recognize their drivers as employees rather than independent contractors, further diminish the rewards of the pay-for-performance model. Evidently, there are too many inputs like gas mileage, safety risk, or hours compared to the outputs, which is just low pay, so drivers become unmotivated because their work is not appropriately rewarded. The lack of drivers also results in a high decline rate for rides, so the riders are unhappy and it causes Uber to ultimately lose customers. Drivers additionally become focused on obtaining individual rewards rather than working for the best interests of the company, which demonstrates the passed-down effect of the I over we culture.
First and foremost, to address the issue of female rider safety, we recommend Uber implements a system that will allow female riders to explicitly request female drivers. Not only would this benefit the female rider, as they are more likely to feel safe and secure, but this would also benefit Uber, as it would serve as a competitive advantage for them over other rideshare competitors. In order to ensure that female drivers are protected from perverted male customers, Uber could also implement a gender verification process in this system to guarantee that those requesting female drivers would in fact themselves be females with genuine safety and comfortability concerns. Second, to address a multitude of issues, we suggest that Uber adopts a hierarchical, structured worker classification system. We envisioned a tiered system based upon years in service, number of rides given, and ratings received. The tiers would allow drivers the ability to determine their own willingness to work based upon the outputs received. The obvious counterargument to this sort of system is that Uber would have to spend more money on increased wages, health services, insurance, etc. However, we believe the monetary losses incurred would be largely offset by savings on legal fees and access to a larger market. Uber has been sued 3 times in the past year regarding workers' rights by California, Massachusetts, and the United Kingdom. By being proactive rather than reactive, Uber would in essence be protecting itself from future litigations, worker strikes, and public outcry.
As Alan has mentioned already, by having a more structured contractor classification, Uber would be addressing the problems that arose from lack of an organization. And if Uber can address the inequality in wages, that will decrease the need for employees to work against their supervisor, because there would be an established system on how people can get raises and benefits as well. And another recommendation we have is that regarding the numerous instances of passengers have reported harassment or even sexual assault from their driver, Uber should create a division that is focused solely on addressing customers' harassment cases. We have previously mentioned that the customer complaints were dismissed because the company focused on retaining as many drivers as possible so they can maintain their low cost, lower pay, and as profit as it is. But not fixing this problem will hurt and damage the company name in the long run. Lastly, we recommend that Uber should take steps to fight these harassment cases before they start, because preventing harassment before it occurs is the main goal. We propose that HR department of Uber should take sexual consent education more seriously for its employees and its drivers. Even though making changes in the top levels of the hierarchy would be more effective in terms of like setting the company culture straight, since the lower levels of the hierarchy in this case, which are the drivers, are the client-facing side of this organization, it would be more beneficial in the short term, with a short amount of time, to work in educating the drivers to get results back. To make our final closing statement, we all know that Uber has achieved great success, and since it was founded in 2009 in San Francisco. Along the way, some things went wrong and they weren't attended properly, and we have identified some of these problems and presented some possible solutions as well. And Uber has been working on some of these problems in the recent years as we're like talking, which has led them to change their CEO. If Uber can implement the necessary changes that has been demanded by the customer for the longest time, such as being able to choose a female driver or their sexual harassment cases not being dismissed, if they can make these things work, they will manage to keep up with the industry. But given that people are more sensitive with topics like sexual harassment or equality, these issues could be detrimental to the company if they're not addressed properly.